So, welcome to our session about self-teaching dashboards. I'm Jewel Larray, and I am a product manager on the dashboard applications team.
And I'm Owen. I am a software engineer on dashboard applications.
So we decided to speak today about how to build in instructions to dashboards because a lot more bigger companies are trying to encourage a sense of like a culture of analytics, and you may have people in your organizations that have never really worked with data or dashboards before and aren't used to the interactive paradigms that we take for granted. So we think with a few simple tips and design principles, you can take people who have never seen data before and they can understand how to use your dashboards without you ever having to talk to them. So that's nice. I hate talking to people.
Yeah, me too.
Psych, I'm here, obviously. Anyway, I'm gonna set the stage a little bit. So just so that you get to know, you guys know me, but you don't know Owen. Owen's cool. He works on the Dash Apps team with me. We work really closely together. And we sit next to each other, and we have a lot in common. I play bass.
I play
guitar. And we sit near each other and talk about work and hang out a lot.
Yeah, and I was always asking Jewel for mentorship on things like flower blazers and guitars in particular.
Yeah, and if you know me, you know that I think the best way to answer a question is through data. So Owen approached me with a very interesting question the other day because he was looking to buy a bass.
You see, my band is trying to record our very first demo, but we don't have a bass player, so it falls on me as band leader to buy a bass and play the bass on the tracks to lay down that low-end rumble.
So I scraped some data from a website called reverb.com, which is where people buy and sell new and used gear from individuals and from stores. And I scraped it for every bass listing they have. And I threw together a quick dashboard for Owen. I kind of just explored some sheets, threw it together. So Owen, why don't you take a look at this dashboard I made you?
Wow, Jewel, thanks for this dashboard. See, let's take a look at this dashboard. We got, looks like what appears to be every single bass listing. We got a bunch of brands. We got shops. Do I really need a shop if I'm buying online? I got condition of basses, and got a lot of every model of bass there is, I suppose. So I'm pretty confused, Jewel, to start off with.
Really?
Well, you see, have you guys ever looked at a dashboard and you thought, wow, there's all this information, and it's kind of labeled. You got bases by brand. It's bases by brand, but I feel like when I look at this dashboard, Yeah, thank you. But when I look at this dashboard, I have no idea what the workflow of this dashboard is. It just kind of looks like a big data dump. And I also don't even know if I need all the information to answer my data question in this dashboard.
All right, so what did we learn? Owen was very confused. The dashboard I made might have made sense to me because I was the one who did all the analysis. I knew what those sheets were. I knew how they interacted with each other. But just throwing sheets together on a dashboard like that isn't super helpful to someone who's never really worked with a dashboard before. So it was overwhelmed with information, and there was no clear workflow to how it went. So let's try to incorporate some principles of intuitive dashboard design here so that we can improve this thing and get Owen that base.
Yeah, and I would like to also give a quick shout out to the Tableau Twitter community. Jewel made a tweet asking you guys what you guys put in your dashboards to make them as consumer-friendly and self-teaching as possible. And those responses really helped shape the content of this presentation.
So to start with, I'm going to break up some of these tips into larger groups. And let's start with the layout, because that was really initially just a problem right off the bat.
Yeah, I was really confused by the layout. I didn't even know how to begin answering my data question. Or looking for a bass.
You know, it's interesting you use that term data question, Owen, because I really had no consideration for what you actually wanted to know.
Wow, thanks, Jewel.
Besides that you wanted a bass. And I don't know how you wanted to answer that question, like what you're looking for and what things are important to you. So it's challenging to figure out what to put on dashboard if you don't know what actually needs to be there because you don't know the question you're trying to ask. So, Owen, what would help you make this decision about which bass you want to buy?
Well, let me think through what I would do to start looking for a bass. Jewel, since I know literally nothing about basses, I was first thinking about what kind of bases are like even out there, like what kind of like makes and which brands are really popular for bases. And yeah, that's my second question. What kind of bases are people like, actually buying? Like, I don't want to buy some like no-name like, base that will just crap out on me. And then my last question is like, out of which bases are popular, how do I find the specific base that I need?
Cool. Well, now that I've done some requirements gathering, I can actually figure out what to build here, and I can get rid of all the stuff I don't need.
Well,
So Owen had 3 really distinct requirements. He wants an overview of the marketplace, he wants an idea of what's popular, and he wants a way to have a very particular search to filter down to exactly the model he wants. So all of these things were technically possible on that dashboard that I made, but we all know that no one was going to be able to figure that out. So even if it's possible, if he can't figure out how to do it, it's not very useful. So Owen, my idea, since you have these 3 really distinct questions, and you were obviously very overwhelmed with having a lot of stuff on a dashboard, so what if we break up each of these 3 questions into 3 different dashboards?
that sounds awesome, Jewel, but once you break down these 3 dashboards, and these one dashboard into 3 dashboards, how do you know what goes on each dashboard?
Well, I can refer back to that guiding question that you gave me for each of these dashboards and use that to think how I might try to answer that question now that I have some sense of and empathy of what you're going through. So for example, if I was thinking through what might go on the overview, I might start with something like this. I made you 3 dashboards magically, so quickly.
Wow, you're so fast, Jewel. You should do Iron Viz.
So here you can see, this is the ones that I already fixed. Psych, that's not here. So here you can see I started with the brand up at the top because I think that's a good overall view of what's out there. And you can click through and kind of go to smaller and smaller levels of detail. So what do you think? Give that a try.
Oh yeah, let's take a look. This is really helpful, but the first thing that I'm confused by is which of the 3 data questions is this dashboard answering? I actually have no idea.
Oh, that's a great point, Owen. If I'm going to break this up into 3 different dashboards, I should really think about how to utilize text in the right way to make this happen. So I separated those questions into 3 dashboards, and it really helped it not feel so overwhelming, but Owen still needs some help to understand what all of the text on here means. So, to start with your first question, we should really try to add the title to the dashboard and make sure that you can understand what's going on here. If you start your dashboards with a title that is a question, it really makes it so that the person has a guiding thought that they're approaching this dashboard with, and it'll help guide their interactive workflow. So, it's very simple to add a title. We just go to dashboard, and we say, show title. Ooh. Bam, there. See, I'm also really fast at typing. You didn't even see that, huh?
Mind blown. Yeah, now that we see the title, this is really helpful. Now I know that this is basically for the marketplace overview, right?
Right, yeah. So are there any other things on the dashboard that were confusing to you, Owen?
Well, previously I noticed that I have a hard time understanding one of the axis labels. One of the axis labels says number of records. I'm not quite sure what number of records really means, if that makes sense. Is that the number of records that was recorded with each single base?
I can see why you might think that.
Are we looking for some kind of like legendary base that's been played on like millions of albums?
I mean, we could look for one, but I don't think that's what that is. And you're right, it is confusing when there are things that are named number of records and you don't actually know what that is because you're not someone who does analytics in Tableau all the time. Hold on, let me just fix something really quick.
Sorry.
So you should always check your axis labels because this is a really big problem for a lot of new users, especially when you start throwing in groups, table calcs, all kinds of stuff like that. You get all kinds of weird text underneath your axes. So number of records, I decided I think we should maybe change it. Maybe we should call it what it is, which is number of base listings.
Yeah.
So we could either edit the axis directly like this, but since there are so many times that number of records shows up because this is the main way we're counting things, let's go to one of these and just rename it in our measures. That way it'll populate to all of our different axes. So I'm going to go here and rename number of base listings. So what do you think, Owen? Is that more useful?
Oh, so we're not looking for some kind of legendary base? That's just how many listings there are?
Yes, that is just a count of how many listings there are.
Oh, that's really helpful to me. And it'll be really helpful to other consumers in the future. You don't know how many people might be consuming your dashboard if you have multiple people, if you're building it for a whole company-wide dashboard. And your dashboard might be maintained by multiple people too. So keeping your axis labels as clear and consistent as possible makes your dashboards as easy to maintain and understand as possible.
So is there anything else on the dashboard that's confusing to you right now, Owen?
Yeah, let's take a look really quick. Jewel?
Yeah?
We have, what is the percent of total number of base listings long table across mean?
I think that's 100% clear what that means.
Does anyone in the audience know what that means?
So the same problems that haunt us when we're looking at axis labels also haunt our tooltips, and tooltips are really a pet peeve of mine when people don't edit them. So I like to make my tooltips as human readable as possible, and that's a good way to do that is try to think of, can you make a sentence out of that data? Also, if you have a tooltip that just isn't really necessary because it's not important for them to know a direct number or the number's really easy to read on the chart already, then just turn it off. It's not really useful. So let's go back to the dashboard. And let's take a look at these tooltips and edit them. I'm going to go to my sheet here, and I will click on tooltip. So one thing I like to do with tooltips to make them look really nice is think about what's kind of the main dimension that I'm looking at and make that like a header for me. So in this case, this tree map, I'll just show you what it was, is basis by brand. So brand is really the main piece of data here. So let's make that kind of the title of our tooltip. So I'm going to take the make. Make is another word for brand. You know that if you've ever bought a car before. Take a look.
I'm a millennial, Jewel. I've never bought a car in my life.
All right. So there is a nice big header there. So now we have some other things that we can use. I have my total number of base listings, not of records anymore. I'm going to take that, make a sentence here. Total listings, or this percent of all listings. Cool. Let's check out that preview. That looks better. So now we can see one total listing or 0.001 of all listings. Another thing you should always remember to do when you're making tooltips for new users, you probably just want to turn off the command buttons because it's really easy for someone to accidentally click keep only. Everything on their dashboard disappears except for one square, and they get really confused and think they broke it and never want to play with your dashboard again. So just turn it off. It's not useful unless they really know what they're doing there. Also, in this case, I probably won't allow selection by category. So this is looking good. I'm not really sure what to do with this average watchers thing, but...
Actually, Joel, I have no idea what a watcher is. Does that have anything to do with playing bass? Does watching your bass make you better at playing bass?
Oh, that is a great point. That is not a very easy to understand concept just on its own. It's not self-explanatory what that variable is. And I bet that when you're working with your data at your own jobs or whatever you make data with, you probably have things in your data sets that are like that have a weird cryptic name that people might not immediately understand what it means. So that's why spending time in the data can really make us blind to these kinds of issues of what does that mean? We get so used to all these variable names that we just assume that everyone knows these terms. But we can do things like making data dictionaries so that the person who is looking at your data can really fully understand everything that's going on. So, and in this case, on reverb.com, there's all the listings, and kind of like in eBay, you can watch a listing to see like if the price drops or if someone makes an offer, to update it in any way. So it's a good measure of popularity, which was one of the things you wanted to see.
That's awesome. So I have one more question, Jewel. So now that you tell everyone to make a data dictionary, where do you put your data dictionary? It's like, this is a lot of text. Like, do we put in a text zone and take up all the space on the dashboard?
Well, there's a couple of things we could do. Maybe we could make one additional dashboard at the end of our workbook that has all the terms, or we can do another one of my favorite tricks and combine this with something else, which is adding a help menu. So a help menu is a super powerful tool because it's just taking advantage of a tooltip that already exists, that functionality, so that whenever your user has a question, they can hover over that and see all of the information that you want them to know about their dashboard. So you can put instructions on how to use it, you can say where the data comes from, and you can put the entire data dictionary in there. So it's pretty cool and simple how to make one, so let's just make one together. So I'm going to start by making a new sheet here. And I've already created a calculation here called help. You could really make this calculation whatever you want. I made it say hover here for instructions. And I'm just going to drop that on text. Now, there's a lot of different ways that people do this. Some people like to use a custom shape that they've made a button that looks like what they want their help button to make. So if you want a really custom style, that's a good way to do it. I like to go really simple and just change this into a square and center my label by going on the label and the alignment and centering it. So that just becomes a button like that. And I think hover here for instructions is probably a little wordy. I know that you were confused, but I know you're a smart guy. And if I put something that's just a question mark, I think you'll know that that's where you need to go for help.
See, this is helpful to me because the first thing I see some of these dashboards, first thing I think is just question mark.
All right, that's really all we need. I might change the color here just for funsies. Cool, so now we have our button, and if I hover over it, you can see it just has the text hover here for instructions. But I can put whatever I want in this tooltip, and I actually wrote out already an idea of what I wanted to do. So here we go. And I'll just paste this right into my tooltip. So I've got a little about this data. I've got my data definition so that you'll always know what a watcher is. And I've gotten a little instructions about how to use the dashboard, what to click first, that kind of thing. Again, we're going to not include the command buttons or selection by category. All right, that's all we need to do. Now I'll just go back to my overview and add in, as floating. Hide my title by right-clicking and say hide title. And I just want this to fit my entire view. And, do you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to make my square really big. Now it fits the entire view. And I just want this button to be like 50 by 50, just not super intrusive, just kind of there in the background.
It seems like a reasonable size for a button.
Cool, so there it is. So you're already pretty familiar with this dashboard, so I want to test this whole hover help thing with a dashboard you haven't seen yet. So your first question was, what bases are generally available on reverb.com? Your second one was, which bases do people actually want to buy?
Yeah, that's really helpful.
So I made this one, and you can see I have a little hover help there, so why don't you take a look at that?
Let's see, look at this hover help. This is really helpful. Wait, so how to use this dashboard. Use the controls on top to select which decade you want to see. Okay, let's use wait, what do I do again? So, okay, let's look at the hover help again. So, Jewel, I think the hover help is helpful for things like data dictionary, but I feel like if I have to mouse off of the hover help, that means I can't just I won't be able to see what the Hover Help's information is as I interact with the dashboard.
That's a great point. Sometimes people might not find the Hover Help right away, or they might not want to have to keep going back to it. So there's other things we can do to really teach all of this interactivity that we have, because that Hover Help was trying to explain a really cool parameter thing I've done, and I really want you to use it. But you're not going to use it if you have to keep reading that help menu.
Yeah.
So just like we used a title on the dashboard with a question to imply, like, this is how you should approach this dashboard, we could use titles all over our sheets to just imply what they do, what you should touch, and when. So I've already added some of those titles back into my dashboard. So take a look.
Oh, wow. Oh, we're still on the...
Oh.
Yep. Okay, so click a square to filter below charts by brand. So we can go to...
You should click on, like, oh, and see you can sort by here on the offers.
You go to offers or watchers, right? And one of these. Wow. This is really helpful.
Just cool. Just a cool way to show the parameter.
Yeah.
I'll show you actually, I was looking over here when I'm looking at the offers. There was one that was like really sticking out. Ooh, where'd it go? Psych, maybe it wasn't really sticking out anymore. Data update, everything changed. Don't you love that during?
Wait, I think I saw something really interesting down here.
Oh, yeah. Vox is really
I have
cool.
2 Vox amps, Vox makes bases?
Yeah, I actually have a Vox base.
Oh, for real?
Yeah, it's this one right here. You can see it has a lot of offers and watchers on it.
Wow, that's probably a really cool base, Jewel.
It is. You can't have it. It's mine. That's my style.
This is awful. I don't even know why I asked this question. So actually, Jewel, seeing you use this dashboard was really helpful for me to get a feel of how to use this dashboard. Is there any way we can just include an example inside the dashboard itself that would be really easy to use?
Oh yeah, I like that idea, Owen. Just starting with an example is a really good way to understand how other people approach this workflow, and a good way to just digest the entire thing and see what an end result looks like. So maybe we could put something like that in the help menu that I made.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Yeah, let's do it. Yeah, let's switch the height.
I wasn't ready yet. That was purposeful. Yeah, so here you can see in this help menu, I just try starting with this example.
Okay, that's super helpful. But you'll see, I don't think that I'm particularly looking for that Vox base. As you said, it's yours. I can't have it.
That's true.
So I should not buy one to respect you.
You already copied my blazer, so.
But how do I know how to get back to the marketplace overview if I, don't really, how do I know how to get back to the marketplace overview? Because there's just so many sheets in this dashboard.
That's true. I've gotten a little crazy with the sheets in here. That's true. Well, one thing we can do is we could take advantage of this really cool brand new feature called dashboard navigation buttons.
Wow, that's really cool, Jewel. Can you tell me more about them?
Yeah, so dashboard navigation buttons are a really good way to guide your users through different pages of your workflow and get them to piece out their questions one at a time. It adds another level of interactivity and just makes moving through really easy. Sometimes when you use the tabs for multiple dashboards, people just don't even see them because they're so small. So having something that really begs to be clicked is really nice. So they're really simple to make. I'll show you one right now. So let's make a button that will go back to our overview page. So I'm going to drag in the button over there from the left on the objects menu. We get a placeholder one here, and then I'll just click the drop down and edit the button. So I'm going to navigate to that overview dashboard, and here we can choose our own custom images. So I made a few images. That's the one for the marketplace. This one's kind of for exploring the popularity. They don't really make sense. I just, I figured They'll work. I didn't have enough time. I was practicing for Iron Viz, I'm sorry. Here is a marketplace, and that will kind of represent our marketplace overview. And just in case he's really confused by my super cryptic labels, because those images weren't very good, I will make a tooltip that says, go to market overview. The nice thing about these tooltips, too, is that they're screen readable.
Oh.
So someone can tab through the buttons and not have to use a mouse.
That's amazing, actually.
Right?
Wow.
So because it's floating, it automatically resizes to the size of my image. In this case, it's a pretty big image, 400 by 400. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to change that size to match the other button I made, which was the help button. And we can drag that there. So now, Owen, why don't you give that button a click? See what happens.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. Let's do this. I'm gonna click this button. Oh my God, now I'm here. Jewel, this is the coolest feature ever, made by it's the most powerful and extensible feature we've made so far. Props to the Dashboard Applications team for making this sick feature that I'm gonna use for the rest of my life. And you guys should too.
So that's how we can direct our users through the dashboard. So you had one more question, and honestly, I'm really intimidated by it. Your last question is you wanted to do a specific search to fill in all of the different parameters you had for what you're looking for in a base and be able to get the results.
Yeah, that's true. We answered the first two questions, and I feel like I have a pretty good idea of how to navigate those two dashboards. So why are you concerned for the third dashboard?
Well, it's going to be a lot of filters, and it can get pretty intimidating. So I'll show you what I mean.
Okay, I'm terrified to find out what intimidating to you is.
Oh, where'd it go?
All right.
All right. Ta-da! Isn't it beautiful?
This is the spookiest dashboard I've seen in my life, Jewel. If I want to be this dashboard for Halloween. So we got all these filters, and we got all different kinds of filters. We got the makes, we got the models, we got the specific models, we got the finishes, we got condition, and I feel like I don't really. I feel like this is too many filters, Jewel. Why'd you give me so many filters?
Well, I just wanted you to be able to filter on anything your heart desires.
Yeah.
Isn't that what a good analyst does for their users?
Yeah, but like I think that I told you, Jewel, that
You're getting so firm with me, geez.
Yeah, Jewel, I'm just really passionate about buying the space. I told you that I was going to buy it online. I needed this now, so I don't care about the number of offers, and because I'm just going to outbid them because I have a lovely software job, and at Tableau Software, the greatest company on earth, and I honestly don't care which shop is selling it because they're just going to ship it to me anyways, right? I'm just going to get it at my doorstep. So.
That's true. We could probably remove some filters. And that is my first tip with you for filters. You probably don't need that many. Think about what the question you're actually trying to ask is and what's actually useful for those. So let's go back to our dashboard and see what we can get rid of, huh?
Yeah, of course. Let's do it.
Okay.
All right, let's see this dashboard. So now that I think we should get rid of the shop as well as offers, right?
All right, yeah, we don't need those. Let's do it.
Yeah, those are dumb.
So mean to my dashboard, jeez.
I was trying to.
I worked so hard for this. I worked so hard for you, Owen. I just wanted you to have a base.
I really appreciate you, Jewel, but I did not appreciate this dashboard. All right, we're gonna look at this. So we got make, we got drop, we got multi-select. Is this not a drop down? Okay, this is what is this? Am I supposed to type something here? This is a wildcard match. Okay, this is a drop down. I feel like I don't know really the workflow or the implied action of each kind of filter. It's still confusing to me.
Yeah, another thing when we're working with newer users who might not be used to what quick filters look like in Tableau is that they might not know how to interact with each different kind of filter. So you should imply how to use that filter in the title. It's a really great way to not only invite them to use the filter, but also it's your opportunity to make it clear how to interact with that filter. So if we have things like a multi-select, a good word is select. So select make, and I'm actually going to do an S in parentheses so that they know that they can select more than one.
Oh, you can?
Yeah,
Awesome.
that's why it's checkboxes. And for this one, I'm going to say, that's actually the wrong label completely. That's not helping with your confusion.
Yeah, my favorite model is 1970.
Select a year. I guess it doesn't really make sense to say select a years, does it? I'll just say select year. There we go. That makes more sense. Jewel knows grammar. She grew up in America. Does she know grammar then? All right. And then for these, because these are searches, because they're wildcard matches. So maybe instead of saying select, which wouldn't make any sense because you're just going to keep clicking it and being like, what do I select? I can make these titles something like search for a model, and the same thing with the finishes. Search for a finish. Cool. What do you think? Are those easier to use now? Try playing with them.
let's give it a
Do you
try.
feel invited to play with them now?
I feel extremely invited. This is lovely. If I were a vampire, I could come into this house and touch all the filters. All right. I want a blue base, and I feel okay. They all disappeared, and then let's see. I don't really know how to get the. Okay, we got these bases. I feel like where did the data go? I don't actually. I feel like if we have something like if it were.
It's okay. It's okay. It's going to be fine. We're going to get the data back.
Oh, thanks,
This
Jewel.
can be something really frustrating to new users when they don't understand where all the data went. They feel like they broke the dashboard, and it makes them sad, and it makes them not want to use the dashboard anymore. So that's why it's important to prevent disappearing data. And the easiest way to do that is by making sure that all of your filters are set to only use relevant values. That way, if there's something that you filtered on already, it will make sure that the list for the other things are only showing things that it actually has. So, in case you don't know where that is, if I go here to make, and I go to my options, you can see right now it's showing all values in the database at all times, and that's how Owen got into this tragic state of no data. Isn't that the most tragic thing, just no data? So we can go back to only relevant values, and you can see this list got significantly shorter, and that's because these are the things that actually have data.
Oh, that's helpful.
There you go. Data is back.
Thanks, Joel. So I think that now I know how to use all three dashboards. Let's go get that base, shall we?
I think you're right.
All right.
So, our last scene. Owen chooses a base. So, just like a cooking show, I've pre-baked some pies, and I've did all the changes that we thought we were going to do.
Wow,
And
that's
I've
so
made
fast.
a beautiful, beautiful dashboard for you. Are you ready?
I am ecstatic.
Welcome to the database.
I think my only reaction can be described as mass hysteria. I'm looking at this base. I got to get to that marketplace overview. So let's look at some bases available on reverb.com. I don't think it's very surprising that Fender has so many bases, but I really like playing like shreddy Ibanez guitars, and I see that they have Ibanez basses here, and so they have a large. I feel like they make up a big percent of the marketplace, and there's 241 listings for this year, and we got 170 listings in brand new condition. That's kind of cool. So I don't actually, this tells me that like they're a pretty like big share of the market, but I actually don't know if they're popular or not, or like people actually think they're cool, because I don't want to buy an uncool base, right? None of you guys want to be uncool, right? So this resolution was just perfect. We could see number of watchers by year. And so I know Jewel's really into vintage gear, and they usually define vintage gear as gear that was before the year 1975. So I think it's cool that, so it seems like Vox is extremely popular, but I can't take your base because I respect you as a human. But if you, if I see here, it seems like Ibanez really has a high number of offers, you know, for the bases 1970s. That seems pretty solid. So I think Ibanez could hang with Vox. So we got this vintage 1977 lawsuit 4-string bass. And so fun fact about Ibanez is that they used to just blatantly copy everyone else's stuff, but use Japanese manufacturing to make, and they would sell for a cheaper price before they got sued a bunch of times in the 70s. So these are the basses that they made before they got sued. The bass and guitars they made before they got sued are highly coveted. And so this is actually pretty sweet that you can just find them in Reverb, but I don't know if I really would need a 1977 vintage bass. So I'm gonna go search for the specific bass that I want. I don't really care about the color red in particular, which contradicts what I'm wearing, but we got blue, and I want a blue Ibanez right now. So I'm gonna go down here, and we're gonna go to Ibanez. And would you look at that, guys? We got a jewel blue Ibanez bass, and
That sounds pretty.
yeah, I think out of all colors, the objectively most beautiful one is jewel blue. And so we're gonna get that jewel blue bass, or not. Guys, jewel, why?
Well, there's all those nifty navigation buttons, so you can just start from the beginning and do the whole thing over again, right? And
Yeah.
it's so fun, isn't it?
Yeah, I had a lot of fun, but I think that I've made a decision.
You did? Okay, tell me more.
Yeah, so I've done my own movie magic, and I've actually bought something from reverb.com. And I actually found out instead of basses, because I don't actually play bass, they make guitars with more strings on them, and that people tune down to get to infiltrate the bass's frequencies. So I actually bought a 7-string headless guitar instead of a bass. And so, yeah, thanks, Jewel. I found this on reverb.com. There you guys go.
Well, I'm glad I could be of help. That's a very classy looking instrument you're wielding.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, so just to recap, this is what we did to make our dashboards have a more intuitive design for Owen to really understand and kind of arrive at what he was looking for. So, first of all, we thought through the layout. We made sure that we knew what the questions we were trying to answer were, and then we separated our dashboards each to be focused on one of those questions so that there was no extra distraction on them that could just add to additional confusion. And then we thought through the layout on each of those to make sure that they followed a flow of answering that question, of starting from a place where you know and arriving at a place where you have an answer. Then we did a lot to clean up our text. We made sure our titles were questions so that everyone knew which dashboard was for which question we were answering. We made sure our axis labels made sense and weren't confusing things about numbers of records, or we made sure that our tooltips didn't have confusing table calc labels in them. And we added a dictionary, a data dictionary, so that everyone could know what every piece of information was in the dashboard and what it meant. We also added a hover help tooltip so that if Owen ever wanted to figure out how to use this, or maybe send it to one of his bandmates to find a different thing, all they had to do was hover over that help menu and they could figure out what to do. Then we added some interactivity teaching by defining the expected interaction workflow through our titles. So we started that first one with click on a square, and then it said next click a year, next click this. Really guiding them through and starting on that layout of going top to bottom, left to right, because that's how people read. So it makes sense that they would start at the top. We answered an example question and put that example in our hover help menu so that they could see someone else work through the workflow and understand all of the pieces and what the expected results would be. And then we utilize dashboard navigation to give our user an easy way to just go through the data. Lastly, we fixed a lot about our filters. We got rid of any of them that were unnecessary and just cluttering up the thing and slowing down our performance. We explained how to interact with each of the different kinds of filters so that our user wouldn't be intimidated or scared. And we prevented disappearing data by making sure we were only using relevant values. So that's what we did.
Thank you. So we have some time right now for some questions and answers. If you guys want to know anything about floral blazers, dashboards, or playing guitar, specifically playing guitar, please, the floor is yours. Does anyone have any questions?
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for coming to our talk, by the way.
If you're heading out, don't forget to rate us on the app. Otherwise, we get fired.
And we can't build you cooler features like the navigation button.
Yeah, that's why that joke, if you didn't catch that, Owen is actually the person that built the navigation button. That's why he was like, wow, this is so cool.
What's your question?
So I have a question about navigation buttons. It seems like you're placing story points in a better way. Is that a direction that comes from use buttons instead of story points?
So the question was, are we using navigation buttons as a way to replace story points? It definitely could be used to replicate a lot of story point functionality. So one of the unique things that we aren't really replacing yet with this navigation through dashboards is StoryPoint's ability to have deltas, where you can click on something and save it just in that state. So that's something we haven't figured out how to do on dashboards yet. But we are really, so our team name is Dashboard Applications, and that's a new team. We actually made it by combining the storytelling team, which we were formerly on, and the dashboards team. And the idea is that as we're building more and more interactive application-like things, we want to provide tools and objects that give that flexibility. So we're not really building any one specific tool. We're building all these little Legos and hoping that you'll find cool ways to build them up. So the button, the navigation button is just one start of that. The toggle container, did any of you see that at Devs on Stage? That's another one that we're doing. And it actually, the button that you saw that appears with the toggle container is the same button that happens for navigation buttons. And you'll be able to format them the same way.
So basically, navigation button is trying to switch between different dashboards.
Yeah, so navigation buttons switch between different dashboards in the same workbook. And really we were trying to get around this hack that a lot of people did, where you make a sheet and you have a filter action, things get highlighted in weird ways for some reason, and it was really hard to maintain, especially for people who are coming in, seeing some Zen-like person's workbook, that person's moved on to bigger and better things, and now this person's stuck with this workbook that they have no idea what's going on. So we're just trying to replicate some of the hacks that people do the most often by adding that functionality. So at the moment, he asked the question, can we use a navigation button to go between different workbooks? At the moment, we can't, but what we could do is you could use a image object and then set the URL to a different workbook. So the navigation buttons, wait, you want to answer this one?
They're actually just turned off for stories.
Yeah.
You can't use them in stories, sadly. Can we get one from the back, actually, from that guy? From you. Sorry, I'm pointing at you.
What do you recommend for letting people know there's a hierarchy?
So I would,
Sorry,
the question is what to do, letting people know there's a hierarchy. I would probably define that in my data dictionary. Data dictionary is useful not just for defining their variables and what it means, but also things like hierarchies. If you have calculations and you want to be really explicit about how that was defined, putting that in your data dictionary. If it's starting to get big, I would suggest putting this as another dashboard and then using a navigation button that maybe looks like a data dictionary, like a book like a dictionary, and then you can go there.
All right.
I think it would be really dependent. I think a visual cue to kind of show if it's a hierarchy would be really dependent on the dashboard design itself. So it's hard to give like an overarching tip on that.
I have a question from the right side of the room. Please be about playing guitar.
So the question was, could you embed a how-to video in the Hover tooltip? You can't because it's just a tooltip. But when toggle containers come out, instead of making a Hover tooltip, we could just put everything we would have put in that tooltip into a toggle container. And since that's just a dashboard container, we could literally put anything in there. We could put images, we could put videos, we could put actual vizzes if we want like a viz explaining another viz. I don't know why you would do that. That sounds confusing, but you could do it.
Yeah, sure.
You could put literally anything in a toggle container. And then we wouldn't have the problem of Owen having to continually go back over the menu
I
to
could just
bring it
toggle
back.
on and off
You could
the
just
video,
toggle it
yeah.
on and off. So I'm really excited to see what people do with that functionality. I can imagine things like maybe doing an entire like glossed pane over your dashboard and just saying numbers like step 1, 2, 3, 4, click here, then this, then that. So there's a lot of cool things you could do with that.
What's your question?
So I know that you guys in text to solve for like title names, user name and all that, but it also poses a different problem like real estate issues. Is there a specific format that
I'm sorry, what kind of issues?
the real estate issues?
Oh, real estate issues. Yeah, so actually we took this out of the talk because I didn't have time to build it. But the question was, when you have all that text that's in there, you kind of run into some real estate issues, and that's definitely true. One thing that I haven't seen anyone do, but I would love someone to make an example of this because I haven't had time to yet. You could use something like a navigation button to make 2 versions of your dashboard, one with all the text in it that says do this, do that, for like kind of a first run dashboard so that someone understands how to use it. And then once they're an expert and they don't need all that guidance, give them the advanced dashboard where all of that is out of the way and then the data just shines on its own.
What is your question in the back?
Not you.
You, sir. Sorry, the back is, you in the middle. Sorry.
First question is, will you guys post your presentation where the potential to access it? And the second question is, what version of download will the navigation buttons show?
Okay,
All
I can
right,
answer those two. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you can
I can answer those 2 questions. So these slides will be posted a few weeks from now. If you really need to type up the notes, we have our summary slides. If we can go back to those. And if you really want to take pictures right now of the summaries of the slides, you could have taken pictures throughout, I guess. And the second question is, the second answer, when will dash navigation buttons be available? They're available in Tableau 2018.3 and in 2019.1 beta.
Yeah.
Are you going to make a ship smoking technique more easier to use?
That is such a good question. He asked if we're going to make this sheet swapping technique more easy to use, and I am not legally able to answer that, but that answer probably tells you what the answer is. Right. Yeah, it's very painful. Those kinds of hacks of people using parameters in weird ways or filters in weird ways are exactly the kind of things that our team is trying to get people not to do anymore. Good question right here. So the navigation buttons themselves do not currently pass filters. If you have filters on your dashboard that are global filters, if you did it and then navigated, it will. So one of the problems with kind of the hacky navigation buttons, especially on server, was that it didn't save your session. It started a new session when you moved to a new dashboard. In the new dashboard buttons, everything is one session, so things will carry over.
Their dashboard had drop down for filters. Would you recommend to visual filters that the first page you had as opposed to the drop-down filters?
So when you're looking at more explicit filters like the list style versus drop-down ones, really the question is, what are your users going to be used to? So when I was making that filter, let's take a look at it here. No, it's another one, this one. One thing I tried to do was, instead of having all of my, you'll notice that I don't actually have any column titles because the filters themselves are the column titles. What I was really trying to replicate was an Excel-like experience here, where the column header is the thing filtering it. So that's why I decided to go with this really minimalist look. It's just one way to do it. It's also that these lists are very, very long. So having something like all of these makers all on one list, it's probably not something you want to do. In general, the human brain can handle about 7 pieces of 7 items of something, and that's how much you can keep in your short-term memory. So I would recommend using that as kind of a guiding number for what lists should be like, because once you get more than 7 or 10 or so, it starts to get really overwhelming looking.
Let's answer a question from the middle. I see you had your hand up for a while. This is literally what I was expecting the first questions to be.
Did you bring an amp?
No, I didn't bring an amp, but I have.
Do you want me to just hold my mic really close to it?
Oh, yeah, let's do it.
It looks hard to play without a strap.
I don't really know.
I think you should promise a shredding video on your Twitter later. PS.
Oh, I'll just post a picture. If you follow me on Twitter at Owen Tableau, I'll post a picture. I'll post a video of myself playing something that's actually coherent and might sound good. So you've had your hand up for a while.
So I went to a lot of sessions on improving dashboard performance, and one of the tips I heard a lot was to not use relevant values. So how do you go about that?
I think it's really, so using relevant values can give you a performance hit. It really depends on how big your database is. So in this case, I was working with about 100,000 rows. Not really a huge deal to use all relevant values. Another thing you might want to consider is just that the bigger your data source is, the slower it's going to be in general, and that's going to give new users just a lot of impatience. So maybe starting, if you can figure out, do they need this entire data source, or can I filter it down to a smaller set that is only the relevant information they need? It makes it a lot less overwhelming for a newer user. Got one up there. Right. Yeah, so I haven't heard any plans about kind of dashboard telemetry being surfaced to users, but I think that's a really cool idea. I'm pretty sure I've seen something about it on the Ideas Forum, so if that's something that you care about, we actually do take a lot of those ideas, and they inform what we make very much. So if that's something you want to see, then definitely vote it up on the Ideas Forum.
Yeah, we'll pass it along. Sorry, what's your question?
Yeah, so the question was about structuring the help button, how to make that not be too wordy. Really, one thing you might consider is, what are the things they actually need to know? I probably didn't need to put the data dictionary in every single help menu. Maybe doing it just on the landing page and saying, maybe just having another button that's here, you can go to the marketplace overview, you can go to the search, you can go to the data dictionary.
You can also have, sorry.
Yeah.
You can also have multiple help tooltips. So if you want to put one in context, if you want to explain what a sheet, a specific context by using a certain sheet filter, it might make sense to place a hover help menu there and just just put it in context and like parse, make it less information?
Yeah, that's a great idea, especially if you're trying to explain maybe like a hard to understand chart type that new users might not know, like a box and whisker plot. Having a help menu just for that item could be a really good way to do that. Yeah, so just having help where it needs to be. In general, just keeping things in context of where is that person going to have that question. Yeah. Sure.
So I recently built a dashboard that had like a couple of dozen metrics, and they were never all showing at once. Don't worry. So I ran out of room in my help and because of the character limit. So instead, I made a giant statement that I had for each metric. I had a description about it, and if there's a limit in the function in like calculations, I can read it, which is really nice. So then I could just put that in the tooltip for that metric. And so if there was a description of how it was calculated and what it was, like right there on the trend or in the table or whatever, and then my help menu was much more digestible because I could just say hover on the trend to see the limit.
Yeah, that's really clever. So she used a case statement to kind of go through all these different metrics that were parameterized, right? You could also just use a parameter as like, what do you need help on? So make a case statement that's like, do you need more information about where the data came from? Do you need to know the definitions? Do you need to know how to use this? Make each one of those an option in your parameter, and then they click one, and when they hover over the menu, now the text has changed. That actually sounds cool. I've never seen that before. That's a good idea.
That's awesome.
Any other questions? Yeah. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Right.
You can do whatever you want with web zones, right? You can add a GIF to it, right?
Yeah, if you put a GIF in a web zone, you could put it in there. Right. Mm-hmm. I would have serious doubts that we would ever put like a recorder itself, but I know that we have been in talks about enabling GIFs just as a native image object, so that's definitely a possibility. Yeah.
Yeah, so I have seen one of the features related to the thumbnail.
Mm-hmm.
And how can you transparent as well?
So the help menu, because it is a tooltip, actually, I don't know.
No,
Can tooltips be
I don't know if
transparent?
tooltips can be transparent.
Let's find out.
Okay. Why not?
There's only one way to solve this. All right.
I got to exit
I gotta
presentation mode.
You're so smart, Owen.
Oh, thanks, Jewel.
I can't believe you didn't know how to use a dashboard.
I was told to not make self-deprecating jokes because I'm supposed to be the audience on stage, and that would insult you guys' intelligence.
Okay, there we go. And let's go to our help menu. I think so. It would probably be in format.
Is there a format for tooltips?
Not really. I think it's just like, yeah, I think tooltips are always white backgrounds, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
That would be cool. Yeah, that is true.
What is your question, sir? No, so this one is a 7-string, so I just have a low B on it. But this one's actually kind of a baritone because this is what's called multi-scale. So the length between the bridge and the nut is actually different per each string, which means that the higher strings have less tension and the bass strings have more tension. So like a baritone guitar or a bass would have a longer neck. This kind of replicates some of that functionality. If you have an 8-string guitar, you can tune it down to a low E, which is basically the same as bass frequencies. But no, you can't. You still should record bass with an 8-string guitar still. I'm just being a dumb guitarist who doesn't want to play bass.
All right, I think we have time for one more question.
More often than not, we end up using a lot of features for that.
Right. Right, right.
Do you want any suggestion or any example where you actually have a flow for the filters itself, where you can show them the user how to go about it?
Sure. So when I was thinking through the specific search dashboard, I kind of put these columns in order of what I thought the filter should be. So starting at kind of the most broad category we had, make, and then filtering down to what we wanted. So that's a really good way to do it, is just to line them up. Another thing you could do is literally number them. So number them, especially if they're not like in line with something that makes sense like this. If they're just all over the place, just do it like 1, 2, 3, 4, especially if you have like a call to action like select or choose or search, then it would be like step 1, choose this, step 2. Yeah, so that's what you can do.
One way we solved that was to keep higher data still in product and
Right, yeah. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense for your broader data to be at the top and then filter down. So that's all the time we have. Thank you so much for sticking around. Follow us on Twitter. I'm @Jewelry.
I am at Owen Tableau.
Remember to rate our session and have a good rest of your conference.
Have a lovely day, everybody.